Valentine Salire, aka Salire Sweetheart, has arrived in Global War of the Visions. Now this is pretty exciting as she is a main job energist, a job that's proven to be quite powerful in the past. Now I can't actually remember who the other energist is in the game, but it's really not that important. What is important is that I give you all the information that you need on Salire's kit. That way we can ask the most important question: will you be my Valentine? I'd like to thank warofthevisions.calc.com for all the information used in this video. Now before we start, a lot of you are probably wondering my opinion on the whole Salire censorship issue. Let's start by talking about Salire Stats. Her AP is pretty good at 101 considering she starts with half of her max, but she gets a little bit of initial starting AP from her board. Her magic stat at 477 might have people concerned, but you have to remember for the first 5 turns of a match, she's going to have Hyper Vitality active, which gives a 60% magic buff, and she's also going to get 30% if you want to equip magic up level 1. Otherwise, the rest of her stats are fine. Her agility might look low, but again, we can just put on the Hyper Vitality, and she's going to be a little bit faster. She also gets 10 flat defense, which is very nice. If we want to compare her from level 115 to 120 to kind of determine how far you should take her, there's really not actually that much of a difference. So from 115 to 120, you're going to get 200 HP. You'll get a little bit more AP, a little bit of magic, only 18 magic, and that's actually not going to translate much at all for the base magic and the 60% magic buff from Hyper Vitality. You don't get any more agility, and then Dex and Luck are, pretty much nothing. So really, stat-wise, you're not getting a huge increase from 115 to 120, and Salire's 120 skill, I can take it or leave it. So this might actually be a pretty strong candidate at 115, especially for free-to-play players that like her, but want to save some viz by not buying 200 shards. Now we'll take a look at resistances, and Salire is weak to fire, and that's of course what you have to expect with an ice unit, but the problem is that King Mont and Rain are pretty big right now. Rain came early to global, and that's really going to affect Salire's viability because they can both build magic resist, they can both build projectile resist, and she's just going to be dealing 25% less damage against them. So that is really the biggest concern that I have for Salire, but in the future we're going to see win teams come back with Tifa coming out, and it's a long game, there's a long period of time to look at. We can't just think about right now, but if you were thinking about for the immediate future, then yeah, there could be a little bit of concern about the fire units. Her being good against wind units is definitely a plus. Now, taking a look at her resistances, she doesn't have any resist to projectile or slash, but she is strong against pierce and 10% against magic. Magic, having that is pretty important considering that she's not like Garvel. She can't stack any magic resist if you really wanted to, although it's really hard to take off those offensive passives on the energists, but then not having other resists, not having the slash, that's kind of concerning. If you get hit by Mont or Gilgamesh, you're losing a whole lot of slash resist there, going into the negative, and that's definitely problematic. The cool thing about her is that she has 50% Berserk resist. That means that it's going to lower King Mont's Berserk chance to 17%, then calculated on your faith plus faith, and if you equip something like Carbuncle, then there's 0% chance that he's going to be able to berserk her, but I would actually be more concerned with the damage from that LB if she's actually right up next to a King Mont. Otherwise, she has sleep resist and then confuse resist. Those are less important, but still fine to have. If we take a look at Salire's support abilities, you have Hyper Vitality, which is just a must. You have to have that equipped. Now, Null CT change is kind of important when you're using her on the Time Mage sub, and the reason is that she won't actually cast haste on herself. Now, I'm not actually as worried about her needing this as other Time Mages because she should still be offensively minded, where after she casts a spell, she moves forward. With Time Mages like Ayaka, they'll cast a buff and sit still, and then if nobody's in range, they may cast a buff on themselves again, or they just might get stuck in a corner. I don't see that happening with Salire. The Null CT change is kind of good though, if you think about someone like Rain using the new Fire Raga that puts slow on people. That's actually pretty serious, so being able to negate that could be pretty good. The problem is that Again, with Rain, we're actually more worried about the damage that he's dealing to Salire and not actually the slow. Otherwise, you can boost your magic up by 30%. You can do it again if you want, But then we have Speedcast. Speedcast is always really interesting to look at because you have to look at the specific cast times for all your skills to see if it actually makes a difference or not. In the case of Salire, it really doesn't make that much of a difference unless you want Meteor casting a little bit faster. Haste is actually still going to cast at the same speed because it's 360 plus 360 to 720. It needs to breach that 750 for the speed cast to actually make a difference. Now, if we look at Salire's counters, the hyper reactivity, that's the one that we're really going to be seeing. So having that physical evade is absolutely massive. Dodging King Mont AoEs might be pretty important. Otherwise, slow counter and magic counter are both good counters, but really I think hyper reactivity is the way to go unless for some reason there's just no physical DPS or any attackers in the meta. We'll take a look at the main kit next, and I mean, it's everything that we've seen with Garvel. The upgrades from the EX jobs includes the Chi shot enhancement, which will just give it more damage, and then otherwise I'm not seeing any other difference here. Then we have the Twin Chi rupture, which is going to give it a little bit more range and an AP decrease. So that's definitely nice to be able to hit more people. It's a super powerful attack and definitely something that you'll see her using. As for the 120 skill, it's called Cross Discharge, and it gives you a 30% magic buff and then does 165 potency damage. This also has a nice AoE and costs 30 AP, but it's actually the same damage and AoE as Detonation Blast, which has a 100% hit chance. So is the 30% magic buff a big deal? Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good buff. However, I think you can get it from other places. So just as an example, and it's kind of a weird one, but Masherie gives a 40% magic buff. Somebody that has Luna Verve, the TMR from Medina, can give you a magic buff, and those don't stack. They don't overwrite each other, so if one runs out but the other one would still be active, it's still there, but I just don't see this being like a be-all end-all ability, and I don't see why you would use this over Detonation Blast when that's the 100% hit chance, and that's going to be a huge ability that has 4 casts. So I'm not really sold on this. I think that because of this 120 ability, you can actually wait and not spend all the Visior that you have trying to get those last 200 Mind Spheres. You can just use her at 115. The stats are almost the same. You get all the good skills, and that's going to be totally viable in terms of how viable she could be as a unit. So while I'm not going over skill by skill of her kit, I do think that we already have a great idea of how powerful Garvel is. He's a super good unit, so him with EX stats, that's a pretty big deal. Looking at her sub job, it's something that you're not going to use unless you're chaining in some sort of PvE content. Otherwise, we have Time Mage as a sub job, and this is my favorite sub for her because you get access to haste. You also get some non-elemental casting time skills like Comet and Meteor, which are fine, but the haste, that is what's really important. Haste is an absolute game changer. Being able to apply that on your allies and then just lap your opponent is a big deal. It helps in all types of content, PvE, live PvP, and auto PvP. So I definitely like the idea of a very strong attacker being able to start the match off by getting everybody haste and getting you off and into your fight. Then you also have the Black Mage sub, and it doesn't have flare, so this is more of like a tower thing where you have all these extra casts of things to use. I don't see you needing to use this unless maybe you're in live PvP, and Drain is a way that you can heal yourself, and then otherwise really I don't think you need to worry about these cast time skills when you have some perfectly powerful non-cast time skills on the main job. Now let's take a look at the Limit Burst, and this is one of my favorite parts of her kit because it's so good. So this is a super long range. We're talking 1, 2, 3, I'm counting it out, 4, 5 panels, 2 range height, so you can really reach up to people, and it's going to do a full dispel including haste on the target. The damage, it's on the lower side, but this is an instant cast thing that's going to take buffs off of people, which often means defensive buffs, things like Mont's elemental buffs, whatever it is, and then it's going to increase the CT for yourself so that you can go again faster. The AP cost isn't crazy for a Limit Burst either. I'm really sold on this Limit Burst. I think it's going to be really important that she's able to use it right off the bat, and I think that you know, we can't really underrate how powerful dispels are in our current meta. Next, I'd like to do a few comparisons for Salire Sweetheart, and the first being Garvel. Now, if you just take a look at the level 99 stats, Salire actually compares kind of favorably to Garvel. He really just has her beat in HP and then one single agility point, and she's got more magic than he does. Now, of course, when he gets his EX Awakening, you know, he's going to be super powerful as well, and he very well might even be more powerful than this Salire is with her Energist job. But it is kind of interesting to see that she does scale a little bit higher there. But when we actually look at the sub-jobs, I think Garvel is actually a winner. So he has access to the Kodadama Wielder and Red Mage sub-jobs, and those would just add way more value. The range and ability of jamming thrust to do lots of damage, hit from a far distance away, from different heights, that's just so powerful, and not even mentioning that it cancels casts. The fact that Garvel can break Spirit with his Limit Burst and hit a bunch of people and deal so much damage and one-shot people, that's pretty wild. But the biggest thing that Garvel has going for him is that he's a dark unit. He gets so much dark synergy, and that really puts him up above Salire for me. And I know, yes, we're talking about also how Salire's ice and that, you know, fire's a problem. That's just right now. That might not be a problem in the future, but the buffs that Dark has, we know that's the case right now, and we just don't know that we're going to get the same kind of team building for Salire in the ice elements. When we compare Salire to other 120 EX units like Black Rose Helena and Luelle, I think that she is going to be able to get up there in terms of magic stat, and while she has some, you know, pretty high potency skills, including that 245% potency, I think that Luelle and Helena and, you know, other units, they have more on a whole higher potencies. They have more ways to buff their team or their allies, and I think that Salire kind of gets left behind there a little bit. And then, you know, when you look at the spread of her skills, they're generally on lower potencies, which is why it was kind of important for her, you know, basic shot to get upgraded quite a bit so they can do some more damage. So I do think Salire is going to be a good DPS. I think that we already know Energist is really good. I just wonder, you know, if she's actually going to be doing as much damage most of the time compared to the other 120 EX units. Now, I gotta tell you, I can actually really relate to Salire because I'm also a sweetheart, but does that mean that I think you should pull for her? No, I don't think that you should, because she's not even limited. You can wait and get her eventually, build her up over time. That's totally cool. Now, if you want to pull for her, maybe you set yourself a limit on the step up, whatever it is, and then you get her, you can actually really consider just stopping at 115. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be your own decision, but you would get a very powerful unit. It's an Energist, and that would set you up for, you know, countering win units in the future, having 100% hit attacks that are AoE, that will definitely be very important, and that's going to be pretty good. But at the end of the day, we have better stuff coming up. We have FF7 coming up, and I just, you know, Dwayne's going to be arriving any day now. Do we really need to be pulling for Salire that's not even limited? No, I think you can probably skip that. Taking a look at the future, we can see that the selection quests are going to be starting soon. Camillo is going to be available, and then Moraga will come for the Earth selection quests after that. And then as for banners, we're probably going to get Dwayne at some point as well. We can look forward to more, which is a Water UR Kodadama Wielder, and that's actually Ramada's sister. And then there's also a Wind Sniper coming before we eventually get Charlotte, a Lightning Magic tank. And then otherwise, there's just one more banner until FF7, and I'm actually kind of interested in that because there's an ice guy there who is also a Nightblade who has a pretty cool limit burst in my opinion. And then otherwise we've got FF7, so lots of time to save in my opinion still. You can grab maybe a vision card if you need it here or there, but otherwise I think, you know, anyone that's super interested in FF7 should start going into saving mode now. Alright, that's going to be it for this video, and I don't know if I'm going to do this style again. It's just something that I wanted to challenge myself to try to do something new. I might just go back to doing the PowerPoints anyway, but if you liked it, let me know. If you think it can be improved, please let me know constructively in the comments below, and then otherwise, I'll see you on my Discord. You can join using the link in the description, and I'll see you next video.